Hi friends, your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Stranger Things Season 3, Episode 3, The Case of the Missing Lifeguard. All right, so I'm going to give myself a mnemonic here. Spy Rat Store. Okay, so first we open up this episode with Max and Eleven, and Max is really being a good friend to Eleven. Eleven is really upset because Mike Wheeler is lying to her. And he has cut off his relationship with her because he has been physically threatened by, Jim Hopper threatened him with physical harm if he continues to date her, which, that was poorly handled, but that is what he did. And it was a good scene. I enjoyed the scene. Because Mike Wheeler was being a jerk to Jim Hopper, but Jim did overshoot. That was an inappropriate response. So basically, but then Max and Eleven, they're just having fun, and so Eleven is like, well, let's see what the boys are doing, and so Eleven psychically spies on Mike Wheeler, and he's talking with Lucas Sinclair, and they are literally talking about the breakup, right? And so they're just like being kind of like. This is shenanigans. I really hated that word a while ago, but it is pretty useful. Like, what is shenanigans? It's not a crime, and it's when you're up to mischief and hijinks, and the stakes are fairly low, right? But then when she's done there, they decide to spy on Billy because they don't know where he is, and so they end up spying on Billy. And Eleven realizes something is very wrong with Billy, like that he is, that he's not himself. And Max is like, oh, that's weird. So at this point, she's like, we got to go find him. And so they attempt to find Billy. Well, what's going on with Billy is he has been taken over by the Mind Flayer. This is interesting because we had the Demigorgon. Now we have the Mind Flayer, and then we will move on to Vecna, right? So we're specifically dealing with the Mind Flayer. So, and the Mind Flayer is this amalgamated flesh mass, right? Which is literally pulling human bodies, rat bodies to itself to, pull themselves together. So at this point, Max and Eleven go on an investigation to find Billy, right? And they trace him to his job at the public pool. And actually, I think it's actually not a public pool, it's a private pool. And he's a lifeguard there. And he has kidnapped this other lifeguard named Heather. So they find out that Billy hasn't been seen recently and that Heather is now missing. So they start to pursue and that's right. They realize they do see Heather Eleven sees Heather in her psychic spying on Billy and realizes, they need to help this girl, right? So they start to pursue Heather, and they actually and so they begin their investigation to find Heather. Okay. All right, next we move to Nancy Wheeler. So Nancy Wheeler is still working for the paper, and she is not doing her job. She is being assigned to non-important fluff pieces that she is ignoring, and she is pursuing the amalgamated flesh mass story. She doesn't know what that is, but she is pursuing sus upside down activity, right? And what that looks for like right now is this old 80-year-old woman who has a rat in her basement. Now, anybody else, they would know this is not a story, but she knows how weird the upside down can be and how it can affect many different types of living creatures, right? And so Nancy and Jonathan go back to the old woman's house. This is like their second visit, and she is absolutely housing fertilizer. She's eating fertilizer directly, right? So she is really harmed, and the reason why is she has been taken over and reformed by this flesh mass thing, right? Which is taking over her body and mind. This is a dark story, no question. But they move her, they report this to the police, and they move her to the hospital because they think she's sick in a very unusual way. But this is the continuation of Nancy Wheeler's investigation, which is being done wrongfully under uh, under her job, right? Under the Hawkins newspaper, right? And one thing that's really also very interesting is Jonathan Byers has a single mother who barely afford to feed their family, right? And that might have ended if Bob Newby had asked her to marry him, which was probably going to happen, so they would have had a happy ending there. But she's back to being alone and really kind of struggling. And Jonathan Byers is like pointing out to Nancy, hey, you live in an incredibly sheltered world, and you thinking that you're too important to do fluff pieces for the newspaper when you're brand new, right? Like, and you're at the bottom of the ladder, you know, you're really, maybe you think too much of yourself, right? So Jonathan is pushing back on Nancy Wheeler's privilege, which I think is a very interesting storyline, right? Like, we do want to do important work, but are we allowed to do important work before we've done regular work, right? And I thought that, and the Duffer Brothers just do a fantastic job of really exploring life with this show. So next we reach Store. So we go back to Scoops Ahoy. I love Scoops Ahoy. I love everything about the Starcourt Mall. I love Dustin and Dustin and Steve. And I was just thinking, so Robin is in the middle of this, and I'm wondering, did we really need Robin? And the more I think about it, yeah, we did need Robin. And the reason why is there were a lot of dudes up in this, right? Like, and I was like, well, what about Nancy Wheeler? She's a strong character. She is a strong character, right? But it's okay to have, like, I think they actually got to the point where they wanted to have an equal amount of strong female characters to strong male characters. But I'm starting to think, like, I don't know if it was really necessary to bring Robin's character in. Also, I thought her overall, many of her storylines were tropes, like just things we've seen in other projects that weren't necessary, right? So I just feel like there's a little bit of a bloat for Robin's character narratively, right? But at this point, Robin actually figures out so when they decoded the message that Dustin got, they had to convert it they had to find out what language it was in, then they had to translate it from Russian to English. And by the way, that would literally be 10 minutes on Google Translate today. But back then it wasn't easy, right? Like, they had to really pay attention and do the work, right? And that was a cool part of the show too. But then, in addition to all of that, not only did they have that situation, but in addition to that, they then had to, what was it again? Oh, yeah. So in addition to doing the translation, it was a code, right? Like, the silver cat springs at night, And so what Robin does is she then translates the code and into a navigable map of the mall, and they are getting closer to the actual location of this hidden Russian base that is below the mall that is being created to do a Hellmouth. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing and have a fetch millennium.